Good afternoon, everyone. This is our How to Make Reuse Centers Economically Viable Material Use Forum 9. We welcome you here. I'm Mariane Medeiros. I'm the Senior Project Manager at the Northeast Recycling Council, NERC. And I'm excited to welcome you today for this forum. Reuse centers play a crucial role in the circular economy, providing an effective way to extend the life cycle of products. However, for these centers to be economically viable, they must navigate a range of challenges related to public funding and land use. In this forum, we'll explore how public funding mechanisms and land use policies can support the success and sustainability of reuse centers, focusing on the complexities involved in managing these facilities for durable goods reuse. And just a few of the housekeeping for this forum. Oh, first, NERC, about us. We are a nonprofit working to minimize waste, conserving natural resources, and advancing a sustainable economy through facilitated collaboration and action. What we do is to bridge informational gaps across the public and private sectors, develop educational resources, and advance conversations. In our reach, we do serve the 11 Northeast states and nationwide. We work directly with state, regional, and local agencies, the private sector, trade associations, and others to help address sustainability challenges and achieve environmental goals. For today, we have the agenda starting at 1:30 for introductions, and then we have the speakers' presentations, one after the other. And then after that, we're going to have the facilitated Q&A that will be facilitated by our moderator, Heather from the Zero Waste Washington. And for an overview, this is a recorded webinar using Zoom meetings. And this webinar recording and presentations, and I just saw the question here about that, will be shared on our website afterwards. And for our presenters today, our speakers, we have Diane Cohen from the Finger Lakes Reuse, Karen Jane from Stardust, and Dirk Walsink from Second Use Building Materials. So welcome everyone, and please, Heather, it's with you now.
Great. Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. I'm Heather Trim with Zero Waste Washington in Seattle. And this is going to be a stellar day. So you guys hold on to your seatbelts. We have three of the leaders across the country who work in this space presenting today. So just a little bit about these forums. We've been doing them for several years, and it is a national effort. NERC, we are very grateful to NERC for being the backbone for this, but it is a national effort, and we do try to have speakers from across the U.S. and Canada. And if you would like to join our planning committee, we are kind of in need of more people from other parts of the country. So we could use some people from the Southeast, from California, the West, the South. And so please let me know or one of us know if you'd like to join. So today we're going to have the three presentations. Please hold your questions until we get to the Q&A, which will be the last 30 minutes. The reason is because we're trying to make this a dialogue. We're trying to break down some of the barriers, and we want people to come on, show your face, and actually ask your question and have it be a bit of a dialogue. So we're going to start with Diane. Diane Cohen is with the Finger Lakes Reuse. And Diane, if you want to start getting your screen ready, that'd be great. She's the CEO, and she's been working in this field since 2001. So she is one of the major leaders in the country, and I look forward to seeing your presentation.
I lost my unmute button. Thank you so much, Heather. It's so exciting to be here today. Let's move this. And it's great to see some old friends on the call and so much interest in what we're talking about, and so honored to be here with Dirk and with Karen. And thank you so much, Mariani, and everyone at NERC for giving us this. It's a regional organization, Northeast Recycling Council, but giving us this national voice to focus on reuse. So really, really pleased to be part of this effort today. I have too much to say, so I'm going to go kind of quickly, but we are sharing these slides. So, and my email will be here. So if you want any kind of follow-up, happy to keep this conversation going. So I'm going to talk about the organization of Finger Lakes Reuse, the nonprofit organization that we have, and some of our vision of the future and how collaboration is such a key part to making this viable, and go into a little bit of the details of that. Our question we've been asking is, given that what we've learned, what does a comprehensive reuse system look like? So Finger Lakes Reuse is a nonprofit 501c3 charitable organization. We were founded in 2007. Our county, Tompkins County, wanted a reuse center and put it into its 20-year solid waste management plan. And I was very fortunate to be kind of in the line of being able to be part of that initial planning team and this public-private partnership that's emerged. Our cooperative extension became our fiscal sponsor. They were an essential partner. Reuse actually really ties in nicely with what the charge for land grants are. And so I think that could be a potential partner. And then we had other partners, including Cornell University and Ithaca College. I was at the time employed as the program manager of Significant Elements, which is our historic Ithaca Building Preservation Organization's architectural salvage program. And we had other partners as well, including some people may have heard of Eco Village, which is an intentional community here in Ithaca. So come visit, come see what we're doing here in Ithaca. Would love to see you. And let me know when you want to come visit. Our mission is based on the triple bottom line. We wanted to take a business approach from the start. So triple bottom line, for those of you who don't know, is people, planet, and profit, not just the profit line, which is the bottom line. So our mission is to enhance community, economy, and environment through reuse. And our vision is of a just, resilient, and waste-free world that values people and resources. Our goals are to reduce waste, relieve poverty, and teach skills through reuse activities. And our values that we base a lot of our decision-making on are safety, respect, and resourcefulness. We like to talk about what we call the community reuse center model. Based on our mission, from a community standpoint, it's a brick and mortar location to facilitate the exchange of materials locally, to help people build skills and find connection. From an economic standpoint, we provide affordable access to materials, quality jobs, and also workforce engagement, not just workforce development, but I believe reuse, and we demonstrate, has the opportunity to kind of engage people who might not see themselves in a career, but we could help provide that bridge. And then, the environmental impacts are many and obvious, but a recent study I'd like to highlight, it's a New York State-based organization, the Center for Sustainable Materials Management, that looked at New York State's waste stream and said that 84% of our municipal waste is either reusable or recoverable. That doesn't even include construction and demolition material, which also has an enormous percentage of reusable and recoverable materials. So here's our timeline. We were founded in 2007. That's when we incorporated. And then in 2008, we opened our first reuse centers in a 7,000 square foot storefront in a kind of a strip mall. We've started with furniture, household goods, and building materials, but there was a storefront next door that was empty and calling to us. And there was a series of things that kind of fell into place, and we were able to take the step to expand into computers and electronics. We refurbished computers, and we were able to almost double in size and ended up with 13,000 square feet, almost 14,000. Then a couple of years later, well, first of all, the tidal wave of electronics that came at us was daunting, and we had grant money and business revenues to support one employee and one trainee, but it wasn't enough. We had a healthy volunteer corps, but we decided to formalize a job training program. And so we launched that after a couple of years of planning, primarily with Ithaca College students, what we call a reset job training program. We also, it's in 2012 is when repair cafes became headline news. And so we launched our own version of that called the Ithaca Fixers Collective. And I'm really proud to say they've been meeting every Saturday afternoon, weekly, except for a couple of years that COVID disrupted, since 2013. Almost the same group of core volunteers. We've been really fortunate, and we provide the space and the insurance, and we provide some of the infrastructure. We donated a bunch of the tools to get them started. It's a really wonderful program. And then 6 miles away, we purchased a building. We kept our original space, but we doubled in size again, and we added 17,000 square feet. We also added clothes, shoes, and books to what we were accepting instead of turning it away because everybody was offering it to us. And we recognized the real power in having a one-stop drop opportunity, and that's been incredibly powerful and popular. Driving even more expansion. So back up at Trip Hammer Marketplace, another storefront that's right near our first two opened up. They're not connected, but they're very close. And so we added another 30,000 square feet up there. We also added warehouse space because the volume of material the public was bringing us, and I'll show you a slide on that in a minute, was just really overwhelming. And we added another warehouse space. And so we ended up with, right now we have 70,000 square feet of operating space total. Our original business plan in 2007 said we needed 65,000 square feet just to do building materials, furniture, and housewares. We're just arriving at that now. It's been an adventure, but we expect to continue to grow. Here's the breakdown of our sales last year. The majority of what we're selling is household items. And it's just an enormous volume of material. Clothes and shoes are next. And the only reason I think that they're second is that we're only selling them in one location, although we're collecting them at both. And then furniture is also a big opportunity. We turn away a lot of material or a lot of furniture that needs minor repair. We can't absorb all the office furniture that's out there. So there's another opportunity there. Computers and electronics, labor intensive. We are a licensed Microsoft refurbisher. Very popular and engaging part of our job training program. Building materials are something that's kind of at the heart of what we do, but we've never had like the proper covered space to do it as well as we'd like. So even though we did over $300,000 in sales, we think there's continuing opportunity with that. And there's a big movement locally to get more deconstruction going and across New York State. So really excited to be part of that conversation. And even our smallest category, books and media, we did over $140,000 in sales. And we have one of the largest book sales in the country that happens twice a year. And then, but that we're demonstrating there's still a need, especially because then we've maybe the year before COVID, I think things before and after COVID, we started selling things into like the commodities market by the tractor trailer load. Last year, we put out 34 tractor trailer loads. 84% of the revenue was through textiles, about $80,000. And then the next one, 9 tractor trailer loads of books. And then we have a partnership with an organization in Pennsylvania that's doing similar things, and they are in a very poor community. And so we've been trucking some household items down to them. So, totaling, so it covers the cost of our warehouse space and some of the labor to get these materials into other markets. We'd much rather get things into local and regional markets than these longer out-of-state markets where we really don't have any control where the materials end up. Here's the best way for us to kind of articulate the business challenges we've had. The top line is the number of donation drop-offs we're accepting on average every day, and this is by year. So before the year we opened our second location, we were getting fewer than a dozen donation drop-offs. That's vehicles each day. Now we're getting closer to 200 a day. And then the blue and the green lines are our staffing. So the blue line is number of people and the green line is full-time equivalent people. So we're demonstrating that even though we've been able to build our capacity from 24 employees to 86 employees, or 65 FTE, it's not keeping up at the volume that the public's adopting. So that's caused us some really acute growing pains and capacity challenges. But even in spite of that growth, we've had this consistent business metric that I think is really important to keep an eye on. We track materials as we're pricing them. And, you know, until they're out the door. We don't track exactly which coffee mug gets priced and then when it's sold, but we know the number of household items and the price points and then when they're sold. And so we've had for a 60 to 70% sales to production ratio, meaning for every $100 we're pricing, we're selling $60 to $70 worth of inventory. And that has stayed really consistent in spite of this growth. And so what's really helped us as we've been growing is we recognize that in order to meet a sales goal, we need to produce that much more. And we've been able to communicate that to our coworkers. We break it down by category. It's been a really helpful way for us to manage this growth. But we wouldn't be able to do this alone. So our sales and services, our earned revenues, as sometimes it's talked about in the nonprofit world, have ranged from 65 to 80% throughout the growth, throughout the arc of our organization. And the other 20 to 35% of the income that we need has been coming through grants and partnerships, right? So you can see the breakdown here. I'm not going to go, I don't have enough time to go into detail about it, but it's been really important to have that support as we've been continuing to grow. And we wouldn't be able to do what we're doing without there are some foundations who have given to us very generously, as well as individuals, as well as especially our county partnership, year after year have been supporting what we've been doing because they recognize the benefits and the shared goals that we're achieving together. Meanwhile, with all of this, the global economy has consumed the same amount of resources in the last 6 years as it did in the entire 20th century. So that is reason to really focus on how can we get more of this value out of our waste stream and back into our local economies. How can we collect materials differently? How can we sort them before they get to this point? Obviously, there are marketable materials in here, but we know we can set up a healthier work environment for our workers. And how can we value materials differently? And that's a deep philosophical, just what does the word value mean? There's the technical, how should we price things? But then, you know, what is value? That could be a different, I'll talk NERC into another webinar sometime. So right now, our systems are drinking from the fire hose. I mean, the story of stuff, I'm sure most people in this call have seen that. If you haven't, look it up. It's totally worth it. It's a great educational tool. But this is really sometimes how it feels. The capacity compared to the challenge or opportunity is really imbalanced. And so, you know, we've been operating for 17 years. And when we opened the doors on the premise that Tompkins County needs a reuse center. Well, within 7 years, we were able to purchase a second location and demonstrate that even those two aren't enough in our county of 105,000 people. So what is enough? So what we've talked about is this kind of network of hubs and exchanges. A hub is a large working warehouse that could help absorb large volume surges, for example, when students move out, or you know, when a business is moving and getting rid of 4 floors of furniture, or whatever all the challenges are that my colleagues in the reuse industry certainly understand and have had to manage. And there could be a more of a manufacturing type of environment where there's workforce development programs and partnerships happening to process all these materials. And then exchanges is just a generic term for any retail thrift or online marketplace where used materials can be exchanged. So, you know, what does this look like? And can we make it comprehensive and make sure that it's just and that the workers that are participating are fairly supported, that there's fair labor practices, et cetera?
Diane, 5 minutes.
Okay, thank you. And so none of this will happen without collaboration. So I was very fortunate at the very beginning of my career with Finger Lakes Reuse to hear Dr. Janine Benyus, who has been a champion of the theory of biomimicry, designing systems to be reflective of natural systems. She spoke at a Green Business Conference, and she talked about collaboration versus competition, and it helped shift my mindset. She talked about, she rattled off all the cliches, that we're kind of conditioned to think competition prevails in nature and in the economy, survival of the fittest, and some other things like that. But she said, when in fact collaborative systems are far more long-lived, far more resilient. And I more recently came across this book, which I highly recommend if you want to get into this work, check out this book, Strategic Doing. it is written for the practitioner, and it has these wonderful concrete examples of some major changes in communities and in economies in the US over the last 25 years. Really fantastic book with some strategies in there. One of their quotes is it's all about collaboration. It's all about non-hierarchical networks. Collaboration is a process of recombinant innovation among equal partners. I looked up recombinant. Generally speaking, I think it's kind of an organic quality. So collaborations are messy, they're challenging, they are not the shortest point from point A to point B, but it will strengthen what you're trying to do. So really strongly, I can't encourage this enough. And those of you familiar with business planning, competitive analysis is something that is kind of a required part of a business plan, but we really encourage you to do a collaborative analysis. Who might you partner with to achieve your goals or to share goals with? So I won't go into all the details on the slide in the interest of time, but thinking about who might be aligned with what you're trying to achieve and talking to them as early in the process as you can is just something we really recommend. Here's a few of our partners, and I just want to highlight a couple of partnerships. There are deep, long stories about all of these partners, and we wouldn't be where we are today without them. But the two that I want to highlight are our local Rotary Club and an organization called Crowd. So the Rotary Club, we've been overwhelmed by the volume of materials to the point that we're sending it into other markets and out of state to manage it. So what we're doing with Rotary Club is we're donating a couple of pallets a week to them, and they're bringing in volunteers, and they're coming into our space using our system, and we're tracking that Rotary priced these items. They're taking it from taking it out of the donated boxes that they came in and to the point of stocking them on the shelves, all volunteer effort. And we're giving them a cut of the proceeds by tracking what they're giving us. And it's become their biggest fundraiser. They're a fairly robust club in this town. And it's been a great way to help us get more materials on the shelf. So a great partnership, and would love to continue to build on that work. And then Crowd is an organization that is focused on building materials, deconstruction, building preservation. The acronym is Circularity, Reuse, and Zero Waste Development. It's focused in New York State, but it has helped us add capacity in policy development, advocacy, and research that we wouldn't have had on our own. It's been a really delightful partnership. There are so many needs in building the reuse economy, so many skills that are needed. The Crowd helped us, and I'm really happy to see that one of the authors of this paper, one of the co-authors, is on this call today. So hello, Wyeth, glad you're here. I think Gretchen's on the call too. But this white paper, while it was written for New York State, has material that could be applied anywhere. So I highly recommend checking it out. There's a link on this page right here and just highlighting the economic impacts that they talk about. If we were able to convert 50% of New York State's building demolitions into deconstructions, it's $2 billion for our economy. So there's
Diane, 30 seconds now.
Okay, lots more here. I'm almost done. And so, yes, so there's also environmental justice opportunities, skill building, confidence building, workforce engagement through the process of reuse. Linked to a TED Talk here about mastery, mindfulness, and mattering that very connects to reuse. And then, Build Reuse Conference is happening in Minnesota in August this year. Check that out. And then, here's kind of a strategy for trying to get this going. Happy to talk more about it. We have an online business plan template that just was launched, reusetap.org. Check that out. And thank you so much. Thank you, Heather.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Diane. That was awesome. And as a reminder, everyone, we're going to be doing a very robust Q&A at the end where we're going to have you raise your hands. So please hold off on your questions right now. So now, Karen, if you can get your presentation going, I'd like to introduce Karen Jane. She has been the CEO of Stardust in Arizona since 2011, and she has been in the field for over 30 years. Looking forward to your presentation. And it's looking good, except it's not in presentation mode just yet.
Yeah, let's see if I can get it to work. All right. All right, hopefully that looks like
there you go. Yep, looking good. Thanks.
Perfect. Thank you, Heather and Marianne. I appreciate being included in this discussion today. And I am, as Heather mentioned, I'm the CEO for Stardust. We are an organization based in Phoenix, Arizona. And I'll share a little bit about us and then a little bit about what we feel are the challenges in this business. So we were founded in 1997 by a local philanthropist and his wife who owned the Stardust Company and the Stardust Foundation. And they had purchased a home in an area here in Phoenix called Paradise Valley. And they were going to do a complete remodel on the home and were going to gut the house. And they headed out for a weekend trip and told their friend she could take whatever she wanted. And she actually gutted the house for them. And they said, well, what did you do with everything? And she said, well, I put some of it in my own home. I sold some of it to people I know, and I gave the rest to people in need. And so that's how we were formed. The Bisgroves put up the seed money for our organization with the stipulation that Stardust be in our name. So that's why we're called Stardust. We operate 2 building material reuse centers. There's one in Mesa, Arizona, and one in Glendale, Arizona. They're both in the Phoenix metro area. And we take in donated building materials, most often prior to home remodels. So cabinetry, appliances, windows, doors, plumbing fixtures, that sort of thing, and stock them in the 2 reuse centers that are open to the general public, and people can come in and purchase. We have 3 programs. We provide deconstruction services, which is where our teams go into primarily homes, but we do some commercial deconstruction. They'll remove the usable material most often prior to a kitchen and bath remodel, and they'll leave a tax receipt that can be used for tax purposes. And the materials are donated by the owner and brought back to one of the reuse centers, processed and put out for resale. We also can pick up materials. Often the homeowner or their contractor wants to do the removal themselves. We'll come by and pick it up. And then we operate a gifts in kind program, which takes in donated materials. They're all brand new. They're from large retailers and manufacturers. We're not allowed to sell them, so we actually distribute them back into the community. And that program distributes about $50 million worth of usable material to nonprofit organizations in our community. So in the Phoenix area, might be in your area as well, this happens very often. A perfectly good looking house ends up with a fence around it. And in about a day and a half, this is what it looks like. And as you can see, there is usable material in that house that never made it out before they demolished the structure. According to the Delta Institute, considerable amount of the material that comes out of these homes is actually either reusable or recyclable. We found that deconstruction is the best source for our materials, and so that's why we do operate what we call selective or skim deconstruction. We're not contractors. We're just taking out what we deem are fixtures. So kitchen cabinetry, appliances. On the exterior, we can take pool equipment and fencing, doors and windows, shutters, and even garage doors. We charge a nominal fee. We have for about the last 5 years. As the cost of staff and fleet maintenance has risen, we felt we needed to charge a fee. It's still considerably lower than what somebody in our area would have to pay just to rent the dumpster for the material if they were going to discard it. And then we partner with local organizations that do full structure or scrape deconstruction. They do the deconstruction and they bring the material to us for resale. And as I mentioned, we also have donation pickup service. Folks can drop off at our locations as well. And then we partner with other organizations that take in material donations but have no way to liquidate them, so they can bring them to us and we'll resell it for them and share back the proceeds. About a year ago, we developed a certification program that is helpful for general contractors and other companies that want to donate materials that may be excess or overruns. It's called RRR certification, and there's no cost for the organizations or contractors to join. They simply sign a pledge and commit to using either Stardust deconstruction service or deconstruction and material donation services. And either they can bring it to Stardust or other organizations in our area. It's a way for them to really promote that they're sustainable, which is, I think, at least in our part of the world, valuable to the people that they're working with. So when I was thinking about this presentation, I was thinking about the challenges we face every day in operating material reuse, or in our particular situation, building material reuse. And these are kind of the things that really are key to our success. And it really starts with the materials. If we don't have high quality and consistent flow of materials, we aren't operationally sound. We need a stable workforce, and we need to have low operating costs, which is becoming increasingly difficult. But presently we lease both facilities, and our rates are lower than commercial scale. But that's one of the risks to our organization. And when we look at expansion in other markets, that's really the barrier we can't overcome. But in addition, you need to have a safe workplace. There is expense to that. OSHA has requirements that if you fail, that can be quite expensive. The costs that are incurred for workers' compensation if employees are hurt is expensive. We use grassroots marketing efforts. We don't use a lot of paid marketing efforts. So that's another piece that's really critical. So some of the challenges that we find related to some of those core pieces are definitely financial. We are sustained through the sale of the building materials. We don't receive any sort of federal funding. We don't receive grant funding. We don't really receive much financial donation from individuals. Primarily, we're receiving material donations, and that's where we put all of our efforts in terms of development. There is a lot, at least in our market, a considerable resistance to price. People feel we're selling used material, so the prices should be extremely low. A lot of times they don't even realize that we're still faced with all the same costs that the normal retailers faced with in the market. And because the material is large and bulky, you need a large space. I think Diane alluded to that in her presentation. You can start with a small space, but you'll quickly outgrow it. So large space means higher rent and more expensive operating costs. I feel you definitely have to have a business development focus. And when I say that, we really mean looking for material resources. If you're going to really run a building material reuse organization, it's about the materials that are coming in. Human resources challenges include difficulty finding labor. Sometimes it's difficult to retain them. The work is physical. And it's 105 today, so it's hot in our area. And we're faced with wage inflation, competition, that kind of thing. And as I mentioned earlier, operations have a lot of high operating costs, especially nowadays, not just rent and insurance, but employee costs, fleet costs, whereas the price you're going to get for used material is considerably lower than what you would. Some of the opportunities that we see and things that are kind of critical to long-term success, especially if you're starting out in this business, you need to make sure you have sufficient capital to sustain. You need to have some sort of cash reserves because cash flow can be sort of a keep you up at night thing. You really need to look for facilities. If you are able to own your facility, that is really a nice piece of the pie that makes it more sustainable. But if not, like in our case, we rent facilities, and so we work hard to keep those lease rates low. We do know of some colleagues across the country that have contracts with local municipalities, which is beneficial. On the fundraising side, it is helpful to have financial donations, but we struggle with that because our top priority is material donors. So we're really focused on that first. And we ask our board to help us network and build awareness for keeping things out of the landfill and giving it to Stardust or another like-minded organization. On the business development side, we have discovered that this is critical. So we have a business development person. He is really focused on building materials and building those relationships with material donors. And it's very much like other sales jobs. He looks for leads in lots of different places, both from staff and in his network, but also LinkedIn as a tool. And he's really creatively sourcing donations. And then he's stewarding these donors, just like financial donors are stewarded in fundraising activities. He's got contact with them, clear communication, follow through. We share impact information with these donors so that hopefully they're repetitive and we recognize their support. On the human resource side, we actually have a fully paid staff. We don't have any workforce development types of contracts. We've tried partnering with other organizations that do and have had some mild success with that. However, not terribly stable workforce. So there's a lot of turnover. We've also used intern opportunities with our local community colleges and universities, and that we've had some success there as well. And definitely volunteers have been helpful, although I wouldn't say that that is a huge part of how we operate. On the operations side, after running this for 15 years, we've definitely seen the benefit to a solid core leadership team. Our leadership team's been in place, some of them for over 10 years. So that's been really helpful because in the hourly staff, we see a lot of turnover. So that core stability in the assistant manager and above level has helped to sort of offset the turnover. And it also helps when you're focused on maintaining the safe workplace. On the marketing side, we use mostly social media. We do have a robust email platform. We send a weekly e-blast that talks about new finds in the stores. And then we send a monthly impact newsletter to keep those donors engaged. And then, look for local community initiatives and ways to connect within your community, and collaboration's definitely a key to successful, working on marketing and that kind of thing. This is where we have come from and where we're headed, which I thought might be helpful as if you're thinking about running one of these kinds of organizations. And I know that Diane's organization has done a significant amount of evolving over the years, and we have as well, just I think slightly differently. But we now are looking forward at continuing to grow and build our reuse impact while also providing leadership both locally and nationally, and then working on system development on the community impact side to help our local sector deal with material donations and how we procure and distribute. Some of the interesting things we're seeing in the market and in the sector are working with an organization called Mycocycle to look to see if we can transform the unusable materials. There is a bit of discard in this business, and they've developed a system that potentially can transform unusable cabinetry into a substrate. We've had some conversations with folks about salvaged and remanufactured lumber, and also building codes and life cycle assessment and environmental product declaration. So these are things that help with growth and are sort of side businesses that can help bring in additional revenue and reduce your waste. We are working on expanding our regional reuse centers, so lots of different opportunities there to re-engage the community or strengthen the community and make it more accessible to folks in different ways. And we actually operate a monthly Zoom call that is similar to what NERC does in terms of hosting these kinds of sessions, which help us with advocacy across the country. If you're interested in joining our Valley of the Sun Deconstruction Reuse Work Group, let me know. You can just send me an email and I'll connect you to the Google list, and then you'll get notified of when we have webinars. But
Sure.
lots of different
Five
webinars.
minutes for you.
Okay, I'm almost done. Lots of different webinars about things that help promote and educate municipalities primarily about deconstruction and its benefits in the community. And these are our next steps. We are going to continue to advocate and promote deconstruction as a viable solution and improve and increase our reuse impact in our community. And we're actively developing a material resource system to help our sector, our nonprofit sector, deal with material donation procurement. Thank you very much. Appreciate your time and look forward to the questions.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. That was awesome. I'm looking forward to the questions too. And as a reminder, everyone, we're not going to do any Q&A before we get to the last part of our time today, and we're going to have people raise your hands. So please get ready for that. So I'd like to introduce Dirk. And Dirk, if you don't mind getting your PowerPoint going. I've known Dirk for quite a long time since we're both here in Seattle, and I love his store. In fact, we're right now doing a bathroom remodel, and about 2 weeks ago, I bought 2 boxes of tiles from the Tacoma location. So Dirk is president of Second Use and has been with the company for over 25 years. Dirk.
Hey, yeah, thanks so much. So happy to be with this group and so happy to be with some others that I really really respect. Diane and Karen, both amazing leaders in this world of reuse. So happy to be with you today. Every organization's a little bit different, and I guess to just add some dimensionality to this discussion today, I'm going to be talking about a for-profit reuse operation, which is just a little different than the other two we've talked about today. And I think that there are both advantages and disadvantages to that approach. And we'll just look a little bit at that and how that's functioned in our particular application of that. Lots of ways to do either kind of organization, but Second Use is a for-profit reuse operation focused on building materials and a little bit on furniture and housewares. Okay, now, how do I get this thing to advance? Sorry. Oh,
Yeah, there you go.
There we go. All right. Get that so company was started in 1994, so just over 30 years ago, by a contractor named Roy Hunter, who got tired of throwing away good materials, just did it too much and said to himself, I think this is a resource, we can reclaim some of this. And resourcefulness was kind of the very center of what drove him in this realm. This is good stuff, let's reuse it. We mine things out of the ground, we cut trees out of the forest, let's get the salvage out of the buildings that were taken apart already. And so he opened his first retail store, just bootstrapped it, got it, no building, just a field, started assembling materials. You can see lumber is a picture of that first place, and did business out of a camper trailer. So starting point for a for-profit was just like, the classic started in your garage kind of thing. That's kind of what Roy did, is just small, bootstrap it, keep overhead low and get it going. After a few years, obviously being in a building looked good. And so over time, our physical presence has changed to, at this point, we have 2 full retail stores, one in Seattle, one 30 miles away in Tacoma. As I said, we focus on building materials and furnishings in homes. That's kind of the center of our work. We have crews. We are a licensed contractor. We have crews that will do pickups and non-structural salvage, like Karen would call that a skim, that sort of thing. And we work with a lot of contractors up to full deconstruction. oops, sorry, this thing advances. So just emphasizing the point, our startup had no grant funds. It was a little bit of investment money from Roy's family. Also, our particular example of for-profit company is employee-owned. That's been kind of a value that we've had from the beginning. Roy thought that owners should be employees and vice versa. The employees should own the company. We've explored over time having broad employee ownership, and so far have not found a good way to get to that space. But currently we have 5 owners, all of which are employees of the business, and there have been multiple transfers of owner over time. And our structure is S corporation, where taxes flow through the individual owners, just as a point of reference. So that means that our vision, our way of doing business, we are still very mission focused, where our goal is to keep materials out of the waste stream, to use them as a resource for community. But the way that we've built on that is been from a business standpoint. We got to stand on our own 2 feet. How do we do that? And so some focus points for that process have been in the area of, operational efficiency and kind of business innovation. So I'm going to talk just about a couple of things in that territory. So in terms of accomplishments for the business over time, I consider it a success just that we've been in business for 30 years without outside funding. We've just made it go. We've grown slowly over time, and we've been, on average, very slightly profitable. We're at a point where last 10 years or so, we've been diverting 3,500 tons of material. That's one way to measure it, lots of other ways. We're currently at around $5 million sales per year and have about 40 employees. That's gone up and down a little bit over time. And Karen was talking sort of operational challenges. One of the big things about cost of having leases and that sort of thing, we found it to be a huge asset for us to be able to own one of our buildings. And so for our Tacoma store, that turned out to be possible. And I'm going to, a little bit later, be talking about a differentiation between that and our Seattle store. Okay, so in the realm of business development, we've focused on how can we make this business go forward, stand on its own 2 feet, keep costs down, keep growing the revenue side of things. And some very simple things can make a big difference. So one example is wheels. We've developed a system in our store where pretty much everything gets placed on a cart as soon as it comes to the store, often stays on the same cart from start to finish, from processing and backstocking into the store and out to the vehicle where it's going to get loaded into. And that's been a huge benefit for us, partly in terms of just efficiency, but also in terms of wear and tear. Karen talked, and it's relevant to us as well, just burnout and turnover of employees. And making the work itself be doable when you're moving literally tons of material every day is a big component of that. So that's just one example of an operational benefit. Okay, so I'm moving forward here. A second thing that has helped us scale up and be able to manage our business over time has been a custom database for information management that we use in-house. We started that a long time ago, and at the time it was way ahead of the curve. I think a lot of other folks have implemented this over time, but being a custom built in-house sort of situation, we've been able to tailor it specifically to our way of doing business. So for example, as a for-profit, we don't just take donations. Some things we get for free, some things we pay money for, some things we issue store credit for. some things we consign, and we also work together with Habitat for Humanity to accept donations on their behalf, and then we consign those materials to benefit them. So we got these 5 different ways of financially managing inventory, and this database helps us keep track of all of that. Where did it come from? On what terms? What are the costs associated with that? How much labor is associated with that? What are we pricing it? How is that stock then playing in the store? And then all the consignment payouts, et cetera, are managed through that system. So it's been very helpful for us. It's a huge investment to build it, to maintain it, and there's large benefits to operations to making that go. Okay. A closely related innovation that's helped us move forward, and again, I think this is definitely broadly practiced now elsewhere, but we have online inventory, so pretty much any item in our store that's valued more than $20 per item is going to be photographed and listed on our website, including a location in our physical store where that item can be found. So somebody can look online, see if there's an actual item that fits their needs there, go to the store, and either by themselves or with the help of a customer service person can quickly find that thing in the store, making the whole shopping experience a very popular thing to do. It's kind of turned for many people into a little bit of a game. They'll keep an eye on our website. We post new materials like 3 times a day, and you can see as soon as the stuff gets posted, we start getting emails and phone calls to hold material, and it's pretty interesting that way. All right, so then I mentioned also our connection with Habitat for Humanity. So initially in 1997, we served as essentially Habitat's reuse presence in our area. About 10 years later, they developed their own store, and that's expanded. There's probably a dozen stores locally now. But even so, we still receive a lot of materials that are donated specifically to benefit them, and we send them hundreds of thousands of dollars a year to support their mission of building homes. And so that's been a really good synergistic relationship. We help them build homes, and they're kind of a big brand that enables us to connect people with reuse through recognition of their brand. A final area of innovation that we've engaged, and I know many other reuse businesses have done, is to develop some capabilities in niches that can add value to materials that don't already have it. Specifically, we've got a full-time worker who does lighting repair, rebuild, and even creates new lighting fixtures out of salvage fixtures. We get so much cool looking lighting that is not functional, or the wiring is frayed, or all this kind of thing. And so having some expertise in that area to do that so it's done safely, follows UL certificate. We're not UL certified, but we follow those procedures. So we have good, safe lights that people can use. And we do similar things to a slightly lesser degree in the areas of wood, processing wood products, where we can make them closer to ready for people to use. Hardware as well, that starts off painted, dirty, and cleaning that up so that it's ready to go. And then finally, we've developed quite a few relationships, both among staff who are creative, as well as a number of people just in our community who take salvage materials, much of it from our own business, and turn it into new things, whether it's furniture, decorations, art. And we have brought that dimension into our retail space to be able to sell that and engage people further in the sort of the reuse, salvage, resourcefulness lifestyle. Now, I mentioned earlier, we kind of differentiate between our Seattle and Tacoma location. It's a kind of 2 different markets at some level, Seattle being kind of a large, medium large city, Tacoma kind of a medium small city. The cost structure is pretty different there, a lot lower cost in Tacoma than Seattle. And in Seattle in particular, we've run into some just real challenges over the past few years in particular, where costs have been really going up rapidly and revenues not quite so much. So I just threw a little table in there. I know things vary a lot in different parts of the country, but just to see relative to you and relative to 10 years ago in our situation, minimum wage, $11 up to now 2076. So that's a 90% increase. Monthly rent has gone up 90% in the last 10 years. And retail sales, meanwhile, has gone up, but not nearly so much, kind of a much smaller percent increase. And so we've been actually the last 2024, our business lost money because of that shock of increasing expenses and not quite keeping up. And so we're essentially doubling down on all those things I was just talking about before, like operational efficiency, innovation sort of things to kind of catch up. And we're looking at being back to basically break even this year. But we're having to deal with a longer term issue. If you look at that third line item on the table, average home sale price here has moved from 535, this is in the city of Seattle, 535,000 up to well over $1 million. Again, that's a doubling in value, which is great if you already own a house here. But if you're in a younger generation and you're trying to get into the housing realm, most young folks who are eager to have a place and would love to do it yourself, fix the place up, are not able to get into that realm. And so our whole demographic in our region is shifting a little bit more away from single family homes and away, therefore, from kind of the do-it-yourself, fix them up, use building materials realm. So our whole model that we've been working on for 30 years is not necessarily functioning as well as it used to, and we're needing, in particular in the city of Seattle, and so we're needing to adapt that business model to this new reality. So what are those things?
Dirk, 5 minutes.
Okay, you bet. We'll be done well before that. What strategic options do we have as a business to try to evolve our way to meet those challenges? And essentially, there's a few models that we are sort of examining, pursuing to some degree. One thing that we are already doing is adapting our business so that it is more engageable for folks that don't own a home but rent it, or who own a condo instead of a house. And so we've greatly increased the amount of furniture and housewares, for example, that we've been able to sell, and that's one area. Also, creating materials that are much closer. It's a smaller project to actually turn into a project. So, like prepping wood, so that all you need to do is put the brackets on and screw it into the wall if you're creating a shelf, instead of having to do all of the processes that a person might have done earlier. So that's one. A second one is looking at when our lease is up in Seattle, probably we'll be shifting to a different footprint here. Is it going to be a more space and like a smaller but more intensively used space? That's one way that we could do it. Shifting more of our retail presence to lower cost areas that are kind of in outlying areas. That could be an option. Doing more online sales so that we need less brick and mortar. That has a lot of challenges to it, but that's another possible thing. Another one that we're excited about engaging and have taken some steps in is collaborating in the realm of of multiple types of reuse, bringing those under one roof. So multiple vendors or multiple organizations dealing with many different kinds of reused materials and enabling both drop off and purchase of those kind of materials in a collaborative reuse mall, if you like. I think there's some distance to go in that realm, but there's a fair amount of local public government interest in developing that and supporting that. So we're excited about that as a possibility. So let's see. I think that's my last slide. So there's a few pictures, snapshots of life in a for-profit reuse business. And thanks so much. I did not put my contact information, but I expect those will get sent out for anybody who has questions or wants to talk further later. Happy to do that and share my information. So thank you.
Great, thank you. That was terrific. All three were terrific. So now we invite people to raise their hands if you have questions. And I know Maggie has a whole ton of questions. So Maggie, you should probably raise your hand first. But while we're waiting, I'll start with a starter question. And that is, and this is for all three of you, what policy vehicles would be helpful for you? But the nonprofit model, the for-profit model, just in general, what would be your ideal, say, state bill or local ordinance to pass? And we'll start with Diane and then go to Karen and then go to Dirk.
Sure. I think we all feel the same kind of pinch point. The cost of facilities is really, really challenging. It's a hard kind of bridge to cross. I know that although I'm not fully clear on all the relationships, the way the waste and recycling industry has been supported, I think that there's possibly some applications that public support could give to the reuse industry. There's a lot of economic value. I think that for years, my years in this, we've talked about the environmental impacts, but the economic impacts and the potential economic impacts are profound. So I think recognizing that and figuring out how to build mechanisms to support that infrastructure, in particular facility costs, that's a big barrier for that stops reuse operations from scaling.
Karen.
I think one of the things we've identified as being critical is ordinances, or in some communities, probably it's more like incentives or executive orders related to deconstruction. In Phoenix, in Arizona in general, we don't have anything even close to that. And so a lot of usable building materials end up in the landfill that really could go to use for other folks. So that's where we are focusing our efforts related to policy.
And we're getting there. Dirk.
Wow, I feel like there's probably 10 different avenues that could be pursued. I agree with the deconstruction, kind of promoting deconstruction as a thing. I think that some support related to facilities, related to reuse could be very beneficial, as Diane was saying. Totally agree with that. Some incentive to do salvage, to recover materials beyond deconstruction, so not just structural, but non-structural. I would say that another avenue is just a whole economic model of waste. So right now, transfer stations get money for tip fees. And in Seattle area, Washington, tip fees super high. So you think, oh, that's great. It reduces the incentive to throw things away. But for the operator, which locally here is in many cases the government, there's a huge revenue source. So the more waste you get, the more revenue you get. And it's a little twisted in terms of what we're trying to achieve in terms of incentive to savings. So reworking that model so that there's revenue when things are saved more than when they are thrown away.
Cool, great. Okay, Maggie, let's have you go first. And if you can give both your name and then where you're from, that'd be great for everybody.
Okay, Maggie Clark, PhD. I'm from New York City, Upper Manhattan. And The Manhattan Solid Waste Advisory Board has been looking into reuse for decades, and we've been wanting there to be reuse characterization studies so that the amount and the condition of durable items left at the curbside would be known, but they persist in using this recycling-based waste characterization, which characterizes everything as either recyclable or organic. So that does not help to tell us where the reusables are, where the durable products are, or whether they're repairable. And so I guess one of my questions though is I'm interested in seeing this happen in New York, but I'm looking for something that is as encompassing as our recycling program, which is curbside offered to everybody all the time. And we know that curbside collection is going to, have more participation by a lot than drop off. And I wonder what percentage of the materials that are dropped off at the facilities we've been looking at, what percentage of everything that's out there are you collecting through the drop off? In other words, how much is still left if there should be a municipal collection scheme? And I put in something that I had developed there, a model with gentle collection, bringing it to a product evaluation and repair facility, municipally run, so that you get everything and you have a thrift store or a donation center in the back end of the facility. I'm looking to scale this up. So
Okay,
yes,
thank
that's
you. Okay, Diane, do you want to tackle that one? And Dirk and Karen.
Sure. I think there's way I've seen attempts come and go, but I think it wouldn't be so complex to design a collection system. Maybe not at the same rhythm as recycling, but something that's more frequent but scheduled, or less frequent. But the problem is there's a lack of capacity to absorb that volume of material and to handle it. So I think that's where we need to focus. I think, as Karen said, you have a facility, you're going to outgrow that size facility fairly quickly. We need space. I think that's an area of focus to start with. I know that's a challenge in places like Manhattan, but I think there's creative ways to get it distributed back outward in smaller storefronts and then into regional storefronts. So I think figuring out what that system looks like, and having a place maybe right outside of Manhattan that's a large warehouse, in between uses, that could be a staging area to get those materials back into local storefronts. That's my idea that I'm
Okay,
hoping.
great. Dirk or Karen, anything to add?
I did notice just in the chat, Urban Ore is an example of a drop off or a facility built near what we would call transfer station here in Arizona. From the building materials standpoint, one of the challenges faced with drop off is most people struggle to get the toilet in their car. If it's only a toilet, like a door, they wouldn't be able to handle. So pickup is really kind of critical. And then non-building material related, we have a colleague who's looking at whether he picks up compost, because there's a lot of kitchen compost machines in our community now. And so he picks up the compost material and could pick up like clothing donations at the same time. But again, to Diane's point, if the community doesn't have the reuse facility capacity, then the system's going to fail. It'll just end up going to the landfill anyway. So you kind of got to build it at the same time.
Can I say something though? Because for a recycling program, they determine how many MRFs they need. They construct the MRFs because they've got the data. They've determined where all the recyclables are, how much there is. So that's what I'm talking about is bringing reuse so that it is up on the same level as recycling and gets the same kind of resources and respect from the municipal government.
Yeah, Matt, you're talking about a system change. Okay, well, let's move on to Mac. And just to remind the audience, we are going to be prioritizing raising your hand. Matt, can you introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi, I'm Mac Everett. I live in Northampton, Massachusetts, and I'm a volunteer at a small community swap shop at our local, hosted by our local DPW. And like all of you, I'm sure, we have struggled mightily to get to as close to zero waste as we possibly can. But we find that there's always a small amount of material that's donated to us that ends up not being adopted and ends up having to be disposed of. And we're in a kind of a somewhat contentious conversation with our host about what percentage of material is acceptable for us to have to throw away in the end. So I'm just curious and by the way, I've really enjoyed all the presentations. And I'm just curious to ask the three presenters, in your experience, what kind of percentage of material do you end up with that is not reusable or not adopted?
Dirk, you want to go first on that one?
Yeah, sure. I'll take that one. So because of how we manage acceptance, we do as much of our filtering on the front end. So we try not to take in things that are not reusable. So I would put our residual rate at around 2%, is what we throw away from what comes in. So very low. Recently, we've been doing a collection program at a local transfer station, and the residual from that's a little bit higher because of the nature of the filtering.
Yeah, cool. Diane?
Yeah, we try to let the market decide. Our workers also do a pretty strong filter. We have a waste reduction charge, and we're trying to accept and then let the market decide. So the workers are the first line of defense. They try to call out and don't accept things that they don't think will sell. But some stuff just doesn't in the timing it has. Last time we did a study, including recycling, it was under 15%. And my guess is we're at about 7%. But we think that if we could broaden our ability to get it onto the shelves, we could reduce that as well.
Yep, great. Okay, Naomi, let's move to you. Can you introduce yourself, please?
Sure. Hi. I seem to have my video disabled, but I hope you can hear me. Start my video. Okay. There we go. Hi, I'm Naomi Spinnick. I'm actually based on Bainbridge Island, Washington, and I'm part of Sustainable Bainbridge. And I run a program called Refashion Bainbridge, and we're kind of like doing a reverse project. And I heard Diane talking about Rotary being really involved. We have this enormous Rotary run sale every July on Bainbridge, which takes over an entire middle school and collects items that are donated from the community. And it's a one-day sale, but it takes a week to sort everything before the sale. And Rotary has just started this kind of buzz about could we continue this for the rest of the year, because it's a one-time thing and it creates a ton of waste because you can't possibly move that much merchandise in that amount of time. In addition, as running a textile reuse educational programming, we see tons of textiles. We started offering clothing swaps, and we'd like a presence more frequently. I saw someone just wrote about having a niche reuse center, and that's sort of what we want. We want a center where we can accept a lot of donations and also teach people how to mend, how to make things from things, have a workshop space, which it sounds like isn't a real part of most of these centers. Also, we want to be focused on smaller items, not the building reuse, because we just don't think we have a space like that. But what we're struggling with is the high rent of spaces. I want to know, I think you, Diane, mentioned that you don't pay market rates for your spaces, and we're looking at partnerships that would give us space or be interested in collaboration with landlords that maybe have unused spaces. And I wonder too, in Seattle, if there are unused warehouses, spaces where the people aren't looking for market rates and just have spaces to donate or maybe want to help build community in that way. If there's any information or advice you have on looking for those kind of things.
Yeah, I think there's a lot there, but one of the things I didn't explicitly say, but it's in my presentation, is you got to start small so you can start somewhere. I also, our mortgage is very real. It's not discounted, but it's a challenge to manage. And so what I was talking about was encouraging some sort of public subsidy for the reuse sector to support and offset some of those costs. it's very difficult to find free or discounted space, I think, anywhere. Sometimes you can find someone who's sympathetic to what you're doing, but start at your scale. I mean, we're trying to move a river that's bigger than any of us can imagine because it's invisibly flowing into Tompkins County. There's 4,000 municipal waste dumpsters and then countless others that are managing construction and demolition materials. So, you know, it's very, very difficult to measure. People want that data, and yet it's invisibly just flowing. So we're trying to divert a gigantic river that's bigger than we can imagine, but starting small and then building your case is, and yes, it should be a year-round operation, and see if you can get some Rotarians to agree with that and help you in the search to make the case.
Great. Thank you so much. Okay, Gary, introduce yourself. And
Yeah,
after that,
hi everyone. Gary Filan from the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation. This is a great session. Thank you so much for putting this on. Following up on the funding of facilities that Diane and Naomi and Dirk all talked about, regarding that, what would you most want to see funding be used for? Are we talking about, well, I'll ask you.
okay. Karen, do you want to start with that? What do you want money from the public sector to be paying for?
I think if the public sector either provided the funds to purchase the facilities or provided the facilities at long-term $0 or $1 a year lease rates, that would go a long ways to helping this sector grow and be sustainable.
Cool. Let's see, Dirk or Diane, you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, from my perspective, I think there's different types of facilities. And I think the larger scale facilities that can really absorb large volume materials, handle those kind of surge times, like student move out times, or, you know, large volume times. And also I believe like that could be a workforce development partnership in that kind of environment. And then those materials then get handled and rough sorted, at least, to feed to markets. And that public money might not be able to or have to support all of the marketplaces, but this larger scale is that step that I think is really critical.
Great. Okay, cool. Allison, and then, oh, sorry, go ahead,
I
Dirk.
just had one really quick thing. So I would say a different kind of help. I would give as an example the RE+ grant program, King County, Seattle area, which is an innovation-based grant for things that people are doing new things. So it helps overcome the initial barrier for starting something.
So like, for example, a new piece of equipment you might need, big one. Okay, Allison and then Donna.
Hi, everybody. I'm Allison. I'm working for the City of Edmonton in Alberta, Canada. I am a waste... Oh, start my video. Sure. Oh, hi. I'm a waste policy planner, so I work on waste strategy, and I've taken on the project of developing our first industrial, commercial, institutional waste roadmap. So until now, we haven't had anything. The city here doesn't do any actual services, so we don't provide any waste collection or processing services for non-residents. So our role is really determining right now how we best intervene. We have two focus areas. One of them is construction and demolition waste. We know there's a lot going to landfill in the region. We don't do any of the services. It's all private sector. And so this is kind of where we're at. And we've been engaging with kind of everybody in the ecosystem. And there's a lot of willingness to do the right thing, a lot of sentiment there. But we've sort of gotten into this like chicken and egg cycle of what to start with, being that we're starting from the ground up with no regulation, no cost incentives, anything in place at a landfill. So I think I'm kind of curious, and I love that we've got sort of real life operators here talking practically about their day-to-day experience, but we're talking about, do we start with something like a bylaw for us, which I think is an ordinance in the US, to say municipally, thou shalt do deconstruction, which would work on the supply side. Then we run into concerns about, well, that might flood the like one or two small players that are really trying to do this, and they're essentially going to be like a weird transfer station dumping ground, and it's going to crush them. Or do we start with trying to do things like grants or seed funding, or even look at subsidizing space for a certain period of time to help those small players try to scale up for the materials to go somewhere first? Or some kind of weird combination of both and just trying to work out what comes first. So curious from those of you guys that have been doing this for a while, when it comes to those sort of injections from a municipality. Thanks, Andrew. I have connected with Vancouver and I heard from some of them that the bylaw came in a little fast and furious and that flooded some people at first, which was an awkward starting point. So I'm curious from those operators, like, what of those sort of policy levers or tools from a municipal standpoint would you recommend starting with
Okay, well,
on
let's
supply
start.
slash
Karen,
demand?
so Karen, if you were to start from fresh today, like if you were starting liquor, what would be your preferred first thing?
Well, I think you actually have to do both at the same time. And our Valley of the Sun Decon Reuse Work Group has had several presenters that have created ordinances or bylaws in various forms, and learned that if you don't have a place for the materials to go, an outlet for the place for materials to go, you're going to have a problem. And if you don't have some sort of structure in place to help those organizations that exist to grow, you're going to have a problem. Also, on the municipality side, if you don't have a way to track and measure and ensure that the bylaw or ordinance is followed, it probably won't be followed. And so you have to build the capacity at the government level as well. Or in some cases, we found folks shared that they basically wasted time on the bylaw or ordinance because it wasn't followed. So I think it's complex and it has to be done in tandem, or one side or the other will fail relatively quickly, and you won't really have the desired result.
Great, cool. Okay, Donna, and then Dirk and Diane, you can chime in on this when you answer other questions down the line. Donna.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. I'm Donna Neely. I direct a nonprofit reuse program called The Great Exchange. We're based in Devens, Mass. Thank you so much for this session. I really appreciate all of the information that was shared by the presenters. So we facilitate the reuse of all kinds of idle operating supplies, classroom and creative resources, furniture and fixtures that have been recovered from manufacturers, retail operations, educational institutions, and other types of entities. So we have over 600 different types of materials, which makes us really, really valuable to the communities that we serve. But we tend to get bogged down by how we're determining the prices for these items. We're committed to providing our target audience with significant savings. We don't make the materials available to the general public. We make them available to nonprofits, municipalities, schools, and other types of organizations. So we want to provide a savings, but it's becoming a little more difficult to cover our operating expenses, which we
Donna,
target about.
Let me take your question in a nugget. That's a great question. How do you all do pricing? Is that it? Okay.
Yes.
Let's see. Why don't we start with Diane, go Dirk, and then Karen. Karen, go quickly because we'll try to get to the last question.
The rule of thumb we use is we price at 50% or less of what you can buy things for new. But then there's a huge percentage of stuff that you can't get new anymore, and that opens things up to debate. And now with Google Lens, where you can scan things, that opens up all sorts of issues. It's something that is an endless challenge. And then do you raise prices to make ends meet, or does that drive away your customers who are expecting low prices? So that's a very real tension in our industry.
Sure.
+1 on what Diane said. Keep it simple.
Okay, great. Karen.
We do the same. We also have a grading system. So A, B, and C grading. Better the grading, higher the price.
Got it. Great. Okay, cool. Kathy and then Amanda.
Yes, hi. I'll give you a real quick question. Fabulous presentation today. It was mentioned a few minutes ago about I think Karen mentioned some contract with municipalities, and Dirk mentioned something about, I think, a partnership with a transfer station. So as someone who operates in Massachusetts, I'm the branch chief for municipal waste reduction programs. I love hearing about these partnerships with municipalities, and anything briefly you could share.
Okay. Who wants to take that?
Yeah.
I'll briefly describe. So we have 10 years ago, I went to our county, who owns a bunch of transfer stations, to say, hey, you've got some empty property, empty lot right outside your station. Can we just park a truck there and collect stuff? And they're like, we could try it. You could do it for a couple of weeks. We did that and showed that it was like nominally feasible. And we said, hey, can we just release this thing from you straight across business proposition? And it took 10 years. It was last summer before I could finally get all of the kinks worked out so that we could put a thing there. And it's still pilot. So just to say it can be done, but we pay a lease and we just collect, we offer people the opportunity to drop off reusables before they enter the station. And that's how it works.
Okay, cool. Okay, Amanda, one of our local heroes, and then Angie. So try to get right to your question, Amanda.
Yeah, thank you guys. I appreciate. I'm South King Tool Library in South King County. No, a lot of you guys, thank you for your work, and I commiserate immensely with most of what you said. My main question, I have many, but would be about what is your greatest barrier to being equitable? I heard a little bit of that, but what is something that you could say, Dream solved this problem, or maybe at your inception would have maybe solved this problem? I know Dave said some location questions, but anything else that comes to mind, or anything else that you've thought of? Thank you.
When you say equitable, I assume you mean financially sustainable.
I mean more like accessibly equitable, like so they're like, equitable to end users.
Yeah.
Social justice. Social justice.
Yeah, there we go. Heather knows what I'm about.
Okay, yeah. Well, okay. In that sense, I think we very much are. We have 2 locations that are very accessible. We're open 7 days a week. We keep our price points low. We also gave away $190,000 worth of material through nonprofit partners last year. But there's still, I think there's still a lot of work to do in that space. But we would be able to do even more with more capacity. That's kind of where we're at. We're just in a permanent growth space right now.
Yeah, I'd say you're extremely committed to it from what I've heard you say before. Okay, great. Angie?
Let me just add real quick,
Yeah,
when people are thinking about like working with municipalities on space, that would, be a barrier. The free space is usually not accessible. So, or the high rent space is very accessible, but not sustainable. So, that's a huge barrier in most markets.
Right. And is it on transit or not? Things like that. Angie and then Andrew. Angie?
For some reason, it says my video is disabled, but my name's Angie Lamar. I'm hailing from the state of Wisconsin, and I'm a solid waste planning consultant. And I work with states all around Wisconsin. But one of my questions is regarding, I'm curious to learn about any tracking and reporting that you're doing that is helping any city, county, or even state waste reduction goals, and what methods you're using for tracking that material.
Okay, who's doing that of the 3 of you?
I can go quickly. We track both pounds diverted and like pieces diverted. However, our counties, cities, and state don't care. The dumping fees are extremely low in Phoenix, and there's a lot of land for landfills. So while we collect data, it's not sought after and also not related to their zero waste goals, because the cities, it's all done by private haulers. So the cities don't use it as a measurable.
Okay, great. All right, so since we got to leave on time, Andrew, what's your really 2-second question here?
From Canada, I am wondering, do you charge sales tax on the secondhand goods? And if so, are you doing any lobbying to have that removed?
Okay, Dirk, you take that.
We charge sales tax because we have to. We would love it. It's not going to happen in Washington State.
And I agree with that. We've tried
just quickly, in Arizona, nonprofit thrift stores don't charge sales tax.
You are lucky dogs. Okay, thank you all very much for attending. Thank you to the 3 presenters. If you guys can join me in some emoticon things. And our next presentation, Mariani, is going to be in September, I believe. What's the date of the next one?
We'll release those dates and send it out to everyone.
Okay,
'Cause
in about 3 months,
yeah.
we'll do our next one. And thank you again for everyone attending, and have a great summer.
Yes, thank you. And you can check the recordings and presentations on our website. I have attached it to our chat. So thank you all the speakers. Thank you everyone for joining, and have a great day.